Hi guys, welcome to Learn Electronics Repair. Today we're going to have a look at soldering and specifically how to solder and desolder small surface mount components, resistors, capacitors, but also small transistors, surface mount transistors that we find on these boards, this type of device. I actually have quite a lot of people comment on the channel about soldering. There's a number of topics that they discuss. One is my choice of soldering iron tip, which is this one, which you see this is a BC3 tip. It's very large and very chunky, and I actually do micro soldering with this, and that surprises some people. And a few people say, hey, actually Rich, I've tried that, or hey, actually I was already doing that, and I agree with you. Others say it's a job for a fine tip. So we're going to have a look at a few techniques. We're going to look at these of fine tips, of chunky tips. I'm not going to use hot air on this video, apart maybe from just pre-warming the area of the board. That's a completely different topic, and that's another way to do surface mount rework. But generally, you will see on my videos, I'm pretty much doing it with a soldering iron. So on this video, we're going to do it this way. So we have plenty to look at on this video. Just before we start, here is a promotional message from SolderStick, who are sponsoring this video, and they have some interesting products for you guys. SolderStick have a range of waterproof wire connectors. These are ideal for use in the field and on the bench. You just require a source of heat, and they will create a strong soldered connection between the wires and a waterproof seal around both of the wires. All you need, for example, is a cigarette lighter or the flame, and you can use these anywhere. Let's have a look at one. The solder stick connectors come in this handy little box, and you can see we have a whole variety of different sizes. To join two wires together, you just find a suitably sized connector. You only need to strip the wire, no other preparation is required. You insert the wire into the connector to the center. The same with the other wire which you wish to join. Both wires insert into the center, and this is the solder. So now we just need heat. I'm going to use a hot air gun, but you could use a cigarette lighter or something similar. If you're in the field where you don't have access to hot air, and we'll just warm this. And you can see after a few seconds the solder melts. It's now running into the wires. You can see them tinning. And then the red band, this is the glue. We melt the glue. That forms the waterproof seal. And it also gives a strong connection between the two wires. And it really is simple as that. Once the connector has cooled down, we now have a strong waterproof seal. Solder stick connectors are useful in a whole range of situations. If we take a look at one, you'll see that one of the apertures is smaller than the other one. And these are ideal if you want to join two wires to one. The wires can be the same thickness or different thickness. I'm actually going to show you now using different thickness wires. First, I will insert one wire into the narrower aperture, and I'm going to use two thinner wires, but we could use wires of the same thickness as the single one. These are going to go into the wider end. Okay, they all meet in the middle, and once again we just heat this up. You can see the solder is melted. That will run into the wires, it will tin the wires, and then once again we just melt the glue. We make the seal. And we have a good waterproof joint. Once again, the connector has cooled down now. We have a good connection. I can put a lot of strain on that. So this is a durable connection, waterproof, and an ideal to join wires together like this in the field. If you're interested in solder stick, in the description to this video you will find a special promotional offer. Hope you were interested in that, guys. The solder stick connectors I actually think are a very good product, especially for use on field. Keep a few of those in your car. They may become very useful at some point. But personally, when I'm working on the electronics projects on the bench and having to join wires together, I find that a very quick and easy way to do it. Now to the topic of this video. First of all, let's look at the materials we're going to use. Firstly, as I mentioned, this is a T12 soldering iron, KSGER. I can't even pronounce that, like many Chinese companies it would seem, but this is the one. So I have the soldering iron set to 380 degrees. I also have a boost option, which if I hit the button takes it to 430. But normally I don't need to use the boost. So probably today we're going to be using this at 380 degrees. This soldering iron tip is a BC3. I actually have my old one here. So I've been using this since 2019. I decided to change it. It's looking very worn now. Even so much the writing has rubbed off it, but this is a BC3. And I'm going to compare this to a fine tip. This is probably the finest tip I have for this soldering iron. So this is a T12 ILS, and you can see it's a much finer tip. So first of all, let's use the BC3. Let's see what we can do. I'm very familiar with using a soldering iron, and then let's see if we can do the same with this one. Of course, we need solder. I'm using this one, so this is mechanic solder. I get this from AliExpress. It's not the cheapest, but I find it to be one of the better or best ones. I haven't tried all of them, by the way, but this one works well for me. So I'm using this solder. And I also have this one, mechanic. This is a 0.2 millimeter. This one is a 0.6. So those are really the ones that I commonly use. They are slightly different alloys, as you can see from the information on here, and they have a different logo. I think this one actually may be mechanic, and this is classical mechanic. I think they're just using the name, not the actual brand. But both of these solders work very well. I would suggest these are probably the two sizes that are worth keeping in stock. You'll find this one very useful for soldering small SMD components, but when you're desoldering, to be quite honest, either of them. We're going to need flux, so I'm using this one. This is an Amtech copy, I am sure, NC559 ASM. This cost me about €2 a tube, so I'll buy like 5 tubes for 10 or 11 euros, something like that. It normally comes with an expiry date out of date when I get it, but personally, you know, this works just fine, and we'll see that in this video. So I'm using this one. There are other ones. I've tried a few different ones, and this is the one that suits me best, and I use this almost exclusively. We're going to need solder braid. I'm using this one. So this is Chemtronics 8045. You'll find this again on AliExpress. If you just search for 8045 without the hyphens in, you'll find that size. There are a number of other sizes, but I find this one actually works best for me. So that's the braid we're going to be using. And as equipment goes, that's all we need, guys. Of course, we need something to work on. So this is a scrap TV control board, but this has lots of surface mount components on, so it gives us plenty of things to work with. The same on the rear, we have the small outline transistors, we have capacitors, some smaller components, so we can practice unsoldering and resoldering some of these items. You're going to need something like this, because I'm telling you now, guys, you're not going to learn how to do this by watching me do it and listening to me explaining how to do it. You're only going to learn this by doing it. Yeah, that is the only way. But I'd still like you to watch while I show you. So probably the first most common mistake that people make is they try to unsolder these components with a soldering iron without any flux, without any fresh solder. They just heat them up and think they're all unsoldered from the board. Let's try it. I've not practiced this, by the way. I've not done it, so it's anybody's guess what's going to happen. But I think I know what will happen. I think it won't unsolder. So we'll pick something at random. Where we are. we have something in this orientation. So we have a capacitor here. And guess what, guys? This soldering iron is so powerful, it just pushed off the board. I did say I didn't know what would happen. Okay. With a resistor, that isn't just pushing off the board. I'm melting the end of it. Yeah. This is in real time. I'm not fast forwarding. And I can actually unsolder that, okay? I can unsolder that. But you see, it took some time, but maybe not too long. So with this tip, actually I can do that. Let's go for something a bit bigger. How about one of these bad boys? Yeah, let's try this. So, soldering iron in. Will it unsolder? Well, no, but we could come to the other end of it. Just spin it round, it's easier for me to work. This soldering iron is on 380 degrees. Right. And yes, it does unsolder. It just takes time, okay? So, I actually surprised myself a little bit with that in the past when I've tried this with other soldering tips, and I think we'll find this later, it won't work. So, you can actually unsolder them that way. Let's now try the same thing, but add a bit of flux, and we'll do a few. So in this case, I'm just going to add flux. I'm not going to add any solder. Let's find some likely suspects so we can go, okay? Let's see. So just a clean tip. I'll get my tweezers in case I need to pick this up, okay? Let's try it. Well, it doesn't particularly take a shorter time than when we were using it without the flux. So really, the flux didn't seem to make much difference from what I can see. I think if we wait long enough, or if we spin this round and hit the other end, so C749. Okay, this one. That doesn't, I was just going to say that doesn't want to unsolder, and of course, what does it do? It unsolders. That's video making for you guys, yeah. That area will be quite warm, so let's go to somewhere a little bit further away. We'll try one of these ones. So again, a little bit of flux. We'll come in with just a soldering iron. That came off easily, so that it did help. So guys, this BC3 tip is doing the job. I actually didn't think it would do as well as that, but it is doing it. Let's just try once more on one of these bad boys here. Okay. Flux on. It struggled to do this before, so let's see. That came off much easier. I'm sure you saw that. Now, it's very difficult to give an exact is that helping or not, because depending on which capacitor you find on the board, it will have a different amount of ground plane or power plane around it, so the board may be sinking more heat in some areas than others. So it is quite difficult to be objective, but I think you can agree that that is working quite well. Let's see if we can remove one of these transistors. So these have 3 pins. Now I can do this with a soldering iron, but I've not actually tried it this way before. So let's see. I'm just going to come in onto this transistor. Try to hit one side. And then switch to the other side. In this case, it isn't really doing anything. I've just checked the soldering on. It is still on at 380. So that actually doesn't seem to be, and then it does. Okay, so once again, it fooled me. Okay, that's the way it is. Let's try with a bit of flux. Yeah. So I'm coming in flat onto the side of the 2 pins, warming it up. I'm going to the other side and it's off. Okay. It just stuck itself back to the board, but that's okay. So you can see that in actual fact, with just this soldering iron, with just flux to help a little bit, this is working quite well. And once you've practiced this, guys, surface mount work is easier than through hole. Sounds strange, yeah? Try it for a while and then see what you think. Let's try now adding a bit of fresh solder. This is the way I would normally work. So I'd put flux either side of the component. This is the 0.6mm. I'd take a bit of solder onto the end of the tip and then just add it to the components. You can see there I have solder on that one. Do the next one. I have solder on. This is leaded solder mixing with the lead-free solder. Okay, swing it round. Go to the other side. Again, I've put some solder on. Put some solder on. Now I will do the same thing and come in from one end with the soldering iron. What may happen is that the component comes off but sticks to the iron. But let's see. So we have the components. I'm just not touching it. I'm just by it. We'll come in from one end. And that came off easily, okay? Other one. In fact, the other one melted as well, actually. Took them both off. So I think you can see that adding a little bit of solder makes this easy. Let's try one of the bad boys again. Okay, so it's down here. Again, bit of flux. A bit of fresh solder. On the end, you can see it's tinned. I find it easiest to turn the job around rather than turn my hand around. It doesn't have like a swivel joint in it. I haven't evolved that yet. I'm not sure how long you have to keep doing this work before you do evolve an extra limb or something useful. Heat in. And off it came. So that is desoldering using the iron with solder, without. And you see that basically in every instance this did the job. I think it does a better job with solder, but perhaps personal preference, or maybe I was actually wrong, because it doesn't seem to make a great deal of difference actually. While we're on this one, we've added solder. Let's just clean it up, and it's best to do this while it's hot. So I'm just going to press the flat of the bit down. Okay, clean it. There. Let's now try do the same thing on the same board with a fine tip. Here is the fine tip. It's set to the same temperature, 380 degrees. I will just actually show that, by the way. And I can show after the other one was set to the same. I didn't really think about this. There is my soldering iron. Matches the handle, KSGR, set to 380. So now we can desolder some random components again. Let's go with this one. Okay. And let's see how long it takes to do. So this is, as you can see, with no flux, no fresh solder. I'm just heating the component. I'm not sure how long the other one took. Probably when I publish this video, I'll put a counter on or something to say so many seconds. If I can figure out how to do a counter, we'll get a counter. Otherwise, I'll just say how long it took. But I'm probably better at soldering than I am at video editing. So I'm heating both ends of this. I mean, I am heating this. I'm not sure how long you guys would like me to do that for. Yeah. You think maybe the soldering iron isn't working, possibly? Because nothing's happening. This is a small one. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, the soldering iron's working just fine. But even that small one doesn't want to desolder. But maybe I've just by chance picked one on a heavy power plane or something. So let's go find another one. Where do you want to go, guys? We should do this live and then you can choose yourselves. But how about, well, those look like there's some heavy tracks. Let's try and find somewhere they don't look like heavy tracks. And maybe a small one. The problem is capacitors are normally across power planes. That's normally where you find them. How about a resistor? I mean, that looks like it's just got a narrow track coming through there. And it's small. Can we desolder it? Well, yes. Yes, took some time, but you know, credit where it's due. We did unsolder it. But that's a very small one. I'm going to show you that in comparison to the ones I was desoldering with the other iron, just so there's no confusion about this. So that is the one I've just desoldered. So small you can hardly see it, but it's there. And then this is one of the smaller ones I was doing with the other iron. Okay? The other one I've kind of lost it, but it's there somewhere, and you can see. So there's a big difference in size. But probably that's not really a fair test, because normally we wouldn't try to desolder these without flux or solder. So let's add a bit of flux and see if it helps this. We'll just go for, that's one of the reasonably small capacitors. Okay, let's try it. So with the flux, are we going to get a result here? Try the other side. That really doesn't want to move, guys. That doesn't want to move. I mean, if that was going to move, you'd expect it to do so by now. Let's give it a chance. So we'll come in with some solder. This is already hot. You can see the iron does work. Let's go again. Try the other side. In fact, we'll put solder on both sides, is what I normally do anyway. And no. No. We could try, and we could do this with the other one also. To be quite honest, we could try hitting both sides ends at once. And this, yes. So that's got it. If you heat from both sides at once, it's off. But if you do it that way, it almost always stick to the soldering iron, which is probably not what you want it to happen. And it ends up completely covered in solder. So you can do it that way, but it's messy. And it probably isn't so good for the component either if you want to reuse it. I know we've got to try one of these big boys now, just to see if we can actually do it with this. Tip, there's one here. We will straight away go with flux and solder. Add solder to one end. Yeah, it's tinned. It's gone onto the transistor a bit, but it has tinned. It's fine. Solder on the other end, it has tinned. Let's see if we can desolder it. Again, we're waiting rather a long time. I will hit the other side. Yes, this was going to come now. I think. I thought it was. I think, yeah, it is moving a little bit. Unless it's my imagination. I'm actually managing to move it. Yeah, so it is. It is, but it's now stuck again. It's stuck itself back down again. So with a lot of fiddling, yes, it's off. I hope you can see already why I use the BC3 tip. And if you're using a fine tip soldering iron for this sort of work, this is probably where your problem is if you can't do it. This is probably what is causing the problem. There's a saying, English saying, I guess they have the equivalent everywhere in the world, that says a bad workman always blames his tools. Well, when it comes to this sort of thing, if you can't do it, the chances are it is the tools. Because honestly guys, this is easy when you've got the right thing in your hand to do it with, yeah? Last one, let's try one of these little transistors. So again, flux solder. Tinned. So as we did before, we'll hit from one side. Let's see if we can push the transistor the other way. If we can't, we'll hit the other end. Then we'll come back again. Another thing with this tip, guys, I'm much more likely to actually hit an adjacent component and unsolder it than I am with a large one. Okay. Is it going to come? If it does come, you know what? We've probably fried the transistor with heat anyway. So if you want to desolder this to test it out of circuit, then this is not good for the parts. Well, in actual fact, I'd say that one's refusing. So that's half the story, unsoldering. The other half is soldering. So I'll put the large tip back on again, and let's try soldering some of these components back on with the BC3 tip. I've changed the soldering tip again. Just before we do this, let's have a quick look. We can see we have the same settings on the soldering iron. So once again, my soldering iron is set at 380. Now let's look at soldering. So how are we going to solder these small components onto the board with this chunky soldering iron tip? Well, we'll take this one. This is one of the more medium-sized components, but we can then try later with one of the tiny ones and one of the big ones. I'm first of all going to clean the board, so I'm going to put this capacitor here. I'll clean the area with some isopropyl alcohol just to remove the old flux. There is nice and clean now. The first thing I want to do then is to get the pads flat on the board, and to do that I'm going to use braid. You can do this if you like before you remove the flux. In fact, to be quite honest, it's probably a little bit easier. But you can see I have a nice flat pad there, a flat pad there. If I want, I can just put a bit of fresh flux on there. We can soon clean it again. I think this will actually work better. Well, I've actually taken a bit of this solder mask off now. It's not really a problem. You can get bottles of that, and if you want to, just put a little spot back on again. But you know, guys, I'll leave that in the video. This happens sometimes, you know, when it happens to you and you think it's just you. No, it happens to me also. Let's take our capacitor. It's here. The way I do this, and notice I say the way I do this because many people have their own variations, and at the end of the day, this is really to some extent finding a way that works for you. I can show you this way. It does work for me. You can see that. But you may find something slightly different works for you. Whatever works, keep on doing it and you will get better at it. and before you know it, you'll go from beginner to pro. So I'm now going to use this edge of the tip. I'm not using the flat tip like I was using against the component to desolder it. I'm actually using this edge, which is a very fine edge, as you can see. This is the 0.2mm solder. This is far easier with fine solder. And we're going to put a little bit of solder on one of the pads, either pad, whichever one suits you. I'm actually going to go for this one. It's probably easier to do the one that's nearest your soldering hand. And you can see I'm using that edge. So I'm actually using a very fine edge of a very chunky tip. And we have a bit of solder. Now I'm right-handed, but normally I prefer to use a soldering iron with my right hand and hold the component with my left hand. Again, this is something you'll have to figure out what works best for you. You will also discover after you've done this for a while that you become far better with your less favoured hand than you were before. So we don't really need any solder on here because it's on there, okay? What we do need is probably actually a bit of flux, although I think this would work well without a little bit of flux. I have the capacitor. Now all I'm going to do now is to heat up this bit of solder and slide the capacitor into the blob of solder. Okay, like so. Yeah. That end is now soldered. If it isn't quite flat, you can either push down on it with the tweezers, or you may find it easier to push down on it with something like this, just to hold it flat. I think this one is flat already, but what you would do is you would hold the end down and just do so. Now you see it's actually moved, but it did flatten, okay? Sometimes you think, well, I should have left it alone, but no worries if that happens. Just get in the tweezers and you can straighten it again. Okay? When you're happy with that end, it's just a matter of soldering the other end. Again, you may want to center it a little bit. I think I've pushed it that way. I'm sure it will be fine, but as I'm showing you guys all the things you might come across, we can always just slide it back a little bit. Okay? The trick is to get that end down so you are happy with it. Now let's do the other end. Bit of flux. I'm now going to rotate the board around. I find it's easier to do the same thing. So soldering iron in my right hand, tweezers in my left hand. And this time I actually need a bit of solder on the tip because that is not soldered. That was flattened with the braid. So we don't need much. Okay? We don't need much. Yeah. It's best to get hold of the component with the tweezers because with a small one you may melt both ends and come back off again. Slide in, solder. What I normally do then, guys, is actually go back and resolder the first joint. So I've just rotated the board once again. That's my preferred way. Just get hold of it. There. And that is a nicely soldered joint. Let's clean it up and have a look. Okay, guys, I think you will agree that looks almost professional. Yeah. And you should be able to do that without any particular difficulty. The smaller ones can be a little bit more tricky, but let's try it. So let's go with the resistor from here. We'll desolder it and we'll resolder it. Taking this one off should be quite easy. So we're going to use the flat face of this. This is where we get the heat in. Bit of solder on the end. Okay. Come back, if you like, to the other end, a little bit more solder. So I've got a little solder there. So actually just using the back of it, basically. We have some solder. Then let's get hold of the part. So here is the resistor. This really is tiny. It's actually stuck to the other end and we have it off, so to speak. Okay. So that's the resistor. We're going to just put this safe for a moment. In fact, probably stuck on the end of the tweezers was quite a safe place for it to be. This time I'm actually going to clean the pads before I clean the board, so there's already flux on here. Nice and flat. If you like, we can just add some solder to one pad. Maybe we won't even clean this until we've finished. So this is again where I'm using this edge of the tip, okay? Little blob of solder. And then it's a matter of placing the components again. The main problem again is getting it straight in the tweezers, because usually you find your tweezers get very sticky with a lot of flux on them. Actually, you probably best just clean them, but let's see if we can do it with sticky tweezers. So you see I'm holding it down. It's literally sticking to everything. Hold it down again. Once you've got it, it's pretty okay. Look, I've got it. Now I've got it, we'll do the same thing. So I'm going to heat up that little ball of solder. I'm going to slide the components into it. There, yeah? Okay, let's do it. How about that? Okay. I'm not going to mess around with it now. That's straight enough for me. You know, if you want to get a set square on it, fine, but you're just making life a little bit harder, I think. That's perfectly fine, I would say. So we're going to come in, again, a little bit of solder this time, because there's none on the pad. Just hold it down so it doesn't go anywhere. And by anywhere, I mean stick itself to the bit. And again, this bottom edge. Yeah, we're on. Let's clean that up now. Once again, I hope you agree that looks almost professional. I'm happy with that. One more large component to solder, then we'll do a transistor, then we'll switch back to the fine tip. So, one of the bad boys. After what we've just been through, this is going to be a lot easier, I would think. There is the capacitor. That is where it came from. Let's clean the pads. Because there are larger pads on this one, I'm actually going to add a bit of leaded solder to them first. Okay. And then I need to get them flat, or at least one of them needs to be flat. This one. The other one I actually want a bit of solder on. And again, I'm tinning the pad that's nearest my soldering hand. Whichever way you do this, left-handed, right-handed. It's easier to stick to using your left hand, for example, for the tweezers all the time, or your right, whichever suits you, than switch backwards and forwards. It's easier to stick to using the same hands and just rotate the board to the orientation that suits for the component you're soldering. So, much the same. I actually think, can you see what I've done here? I've kind of got the tweezers past the end of the component. If you do that, it will never go flat. You need to make sure the component is flat, that the tweezers are not extending past the edge of the component. Okay, even if you sort of grab it halfway up, and you may find, like I'm doing now, hold the tweezers close to the component. Okay, you see I've got that now. This will go flat. If it doesn't, if it does that, well, we just sort it out. Yeah, we just sort it out. So I have it. Heat it a bit, solder, and slide it into it. I think I've got a connection there. But it's set. Yeah. I'm actually going to just hold this down a little bit. I think it may be not quite flat on the board, and maybe wants to slide that way a little bit as well. Okay. That's better. Turn the board. Okay. Bit of fresh solder. Obviously a bit more for a bigger component. Again, just hold it, because there's nothing more frustrating than finding the thing desoldered from the other end when you do this. Okay? And there you have it. Yeah, you notice it wasn't quite flat. I was pushed down on it, hitting it, it's flat. We can have a look from the side. Actually, it may be not quite flat. You see how it's angled a little bit? Well, that ain't a problem. We'll just flatten it down. Easiest way to do this probably is actually to hold it with something like this and heat up both ends. Let's see. Do you see it settle there? Yeah. So that's kind of like get out of jail if you slightly messed it up in the first place. Don't panic, just fix it. Let's clean that one up. Okay, so that's soldered. The last thing we're going to do with this tip is one of the small transistors, and then we'll try the other tip. SOT, or small outline transistor, is also very simple to do. By the way, SOT23, which is this package size, means small outline transistor, 2mm by 3mm, or 200 of an inch by 300 of an inch. I'm not quite sure if they're metric or not. Okay, so first thing, clean the pads, get them flat. Flux, a little bit of braid. And there we have 3 flat pads. You can see I'm using the bit flat now. That's how I get the heat in, and then the tip is how I work on the fine stuff, basically. You've seen it before, so I don't really need to explain it again. Put a bit of solder on the pad that's on its own, on that end. Get hold of your transistor. Again, line it up with that bit of solder. This board's actually rocking, which isn't helping at all. Put something under the edge of the board so it doesn't move. Don't mess about with this stuff. Okay, transistor. It's in place. There. That's got one pin down. It probably isn't flat. So I can now rest my other tool on top of it, heat it up. It's flattened it but moved it, there you go. But it moved the right way this time. If it didn't, you can just heat it up again. In fact, you can see it slightly wants moving towards the soldering iron a little bit. But now it's flat, just get the thing and you can position it, okay? Let the solder solidify. That's slightly off, it's fine, but if you really want to be a bit anal about this, we can do that, okay? I'm fairly confident with that. You'll often find if you start messing around with it, you'll end up in a worse position than where you were. So this old saying of like, know when to leave it alone is actually very true. You'll also perhaps notice, because I'm using the bottom end of this tip here, yeah, the bottom edge, I'm holding the soldering at an angle like this, so this is sloping up away from the board, so I'm very unlikely to catch some other nearby component and desolder it by accident because of the angle of the iron, okay? So another good reason why I use this tip. So once again, we need to put some solder because there's no solder on these pads. Don't need much, that will do. Get hold of our transistor. One leg. Done. And then the other one. And this shows how I can get in the gap with another component if there was one there. Yeah. And usually I will not desolder it. Obviously, there's no absolute with this, so I will stick with usually. But, you know, usually is good enough for me, yeah. Okay, that's nice and clean. Again, I hope you think that is a pretty good job of it. Yeah, it may not be quite flat. Let's have a look if we can angle a bit of light onto it. I actually think this is pretty good. Yeah. I think that one actually does look professional rather than almost professional. Okay. Let's change back to the fine tip and let's put some components back on with that one. I now have the fine tip on my soldering iron, same temperature, I will show you. So once again, 380 and the fine tip. I'm going to use the same technique as before. The resistor is just here, safe. I'm going to solder it onto here. Now I will say, before I do this, I don't know what's going to happen. This channel is real. But whatever does happen, I think we should at least bear in mind that I use that other tip all the time. I don't use this tip. So some of whatever happens may just be down to familiarity of technique, okay? So I'm going to tin this a little bit. I'm going to put the braid on and put some flux on. I'm going to clean the pads so they're flat. Okay. So we get some braid. I'm going to come in with a tip like so. And we have, well, at least the pad we want flat is flat. Okay. So same technique. Tin the pad nearest to your soldering hand. Blob of solder. We get our resistor. We present it to the blob. It's actually probably a bit big, that blob. I'll make it a bit smaller. Okay. I can tell you straight away, I'm not so used to using this. And I'm making a pig's ear of it. But I'm not sure how much the pig's ear is me and how much the pig's ear is the tip, but I suspect most of it, of course, is the tip. Yeah. I suspect most of it is a tip. No. Go again. Got it. Got it, okay. Let's turn the board around. Turn the tip again. In fact, it's actually got it anyway, just by being close to it. But we'll just resolder that. We'll come back and resolder the other side again. So this is exactly the same I did the other one. Okay, board rotated, resistor, soldered. And I've done it. I have done it, okay? Let's clean it up. I'm not sure I enjoyed it as much as the other tip, but I have done it. Okay, it is soldered. It's flat. Can we all agree it's not as good a job as the other one? Yeah. Smaller components. Let's find something small. How about one of these? That's pretty small. About the smallest ones I can see here. Okay. First we need to desolder one, which with this tip is not so easy, we know. In fact, this is going to be quite easy. I saw it lift up. That's because there's thin tracks here, by the way. There's no heavy power planes. So that's come off nicely. This sort of position on the board is probably better suited to this tip, actually. So we'll just put a safe somewhere. Flux, clean the board, solder it back on. That cleaned nicely. This is the 0.2mm solder I'm using, by the way. If that wasn't clear from before, all the soldering I've done is using the 0.2. bit of solder. I think there's probably enough. Once again, we're going to position a very small component. This is a little bit tricky. It may actually help to do what I've done, which is kind of like stick it down into the flux. It keeps it from moving around so much. See if we can pick it up. Okay, I have it. Rotate the board a little bit. I think it is flat. And let's solder it. Oh, I actually slipped with the tweezers and it did solder. That's stuck down. And that's soldered. Turn it round. Other end. Once again, a little bit of solder on the tip. A fresh solder. We'll get hold of the resistor. Okay. Solder it. I'll clean that up and let's see what that one looks like. Okay. I don't think that's a very good job. I think I have it off to one side. I don't have it very flat. But let's see if we can fix that. As we did with the other capacitor that we had that wasn't quite flat. Let's see. So to do this, we will come in with this tool. We'll hold it down. Or I'll try to hold it down. It's actually probably too small to use that. I'll try hold it with the tweezers. Just a bit of pressure on it. And let's see if we can do it. Yeah, you see that just fell into place right. That is a lot better. Okay, I actually think that looks pretty good. I hope you guys agree. Certainly it's flat now, so that worked quite well. That just leaves the badass capacitor and a transistor to do. You may notice, guys, I'm having some problem with my terminology on this video, these bad boys and things. This is because if you wondered why I've not been publishing the last week, I had a guy from Houston, Texas came over. His company sent him over. They actually have hundreds, if not thousands, of crypto miners, ASIC miners, Ant miners, Watts miners, and he contacted me and asked could he spend 5 days with me learning how to repair power supplies, and he brought them with him. So having spent 5 days with Tanner, shout out to you, mate, Tanner, really nice to meet you. Well, Tanner, you're responsible for my language on this video. And to everybody else, I suspect I shall lose that and go back to normal in a few videos time. Or maybe, once met with Tanner, I'll never be the same again, yeah? That was a first for me, guys. It's the first time I've ever done personal one-on-one training. I enjoyed it, actually. Interesting to see where YouTube takes you. I never, ever expected that to happen. Okay, so back to the work. This, I think, is going to go nice and easy. It pushed in. I didn't have it quite flat at all. And it's not so nice and easy because this thing can't get enough heating to solder it. Try again. It's getting molten and then push it into it. Okay. That time I got it. Now again, as I say, guys, that is possibly partially down to technique because I don't normally work with this sort of soldering tip. It's flat. It's down. And it's soldered actually, okay. It's not quite positioned right, but you notice with the other iron I did this. With the other tip, sorry, I did this. So again, we should be able to reposition it, but once again, I'm struggling to reposition it. So in this instance, the other one, I have to say, guys, it's far better. Okay, flat-ish. It's not straightish, but I'm not messing with that thing anymore. I'm telling you now, I'm not messing with it anymore. I'm going to solder the other end of it down. I've added a bit of extra flux this time as well, but there is flux here from previously. Okay. Back with the soldering iron, and I'm going to use the tweezers again to stop it going AWOL. It's soldered. Let's clean that one up. Well, it's soldered. That's as much I'm going to say for it. It's soldered, okay? Let's go on to the transistor. This one we can do here. Everything again the same. Well, I'm just doing this, guys. I will mention again, hey Tanner. So I live in Maspalomas, Gran Canaria, which is a major tourist destination. I'm just outside, but 20 minutes walk in or a short taxi ride. And I know Tanner will agree with me to say, as well as a lot of electronics, we have some great bars here. And mate, we have a lot of nice scenery, yeah? Okay, so that's clean. Again, I'm struggling to get as much heat in quickly, but I can do it. You probably shouldn't slide the braid like that if it sticks to the pad, because there's not enough heat, you'll rip the pad off, but I have enough experience to be able to do that basically. It's perfectly safe to do that with your braid as long as it's hot enough so it's gliding on the pad, it's not sticking, okay? For the last time on this video then, we find a transistor. I'll just line it up the right way round. Clean the tip a little bit. I will add a little bit of flux, it does help with this. I mean, there's flux here anyway, but a bit more certainly isn't going to make it any worse or more difficult. We'll take our transistor and we'll introduce it to the solder. Okay. That went pretty well actually. I'm not sure it was flat, but neither was the other one. Now it's flat. And then we'll do these two legs. So a bit of fresh solder. I'll hold the transistor in place. And we'll solder this one. Moving slightly, that's okay. I moved it back. I'm going to redo this one because it moves, so it may have actually cracked the solder joint. And we'll come in with the last one. Again, if there was a small component there, there isn't. If there was, in this case, I will hit it. I can't hold the soldering iron at that angle that I could with the other tip and still get a very good contact onto there, okay? Or at least I'm not as familiar with this tip, so if I can, it's more difficult for me. Let's clean this one up. And there we are. So that was a pretty good job on that one. Quite well done. I did find it more difficult, but then if I was using that tip all the time, I may have found it relatively easy. I can do this work with this tip, as you can see, but in my opinion, and hopefully maybe in your opinion, it's not as good at it. So hopefully you'll be able to go away from this, maybe give this a try if you haven't tried already. Please get into the comments below I know there are many ways to do this. There's also the hot air method, but that wasn't within the scope of this video. But still, guys, chat about it, comments, yeah. I'd just like to say another thanks to the sponsor of this video, Solder Stick. I know some of you guys don't really appreciate sponsored messages. I will chat to the video, so if you don't know, watch it, or rather if it's not of interest to you, you can easily skip it. But it is sponsorship that is now allowing me to go from running this channel as a part-time hobby much more now towards a full-time business, and that means I can produce a lot more videos. So hey, if you're interested in the product, get into the video description. You'll find the link there. I also get a small commission from any sales, and if not, no problem, guys. You just keep watching. I'll see you all soon on another Learning Electronics Repair video. Ciao for now, guys.